Hello, this is week 13 of the 13-week fiscal program for American Descendants of Slavery. We have myself, Chief Biko. Today we have Chief Alligator, as well as Chief Quietwater. And again, like always, here we focus more so on the first letter in the acronym of ADOS, which is American. And this week we will start off where we left off last week with the reading of the Secessions. I think we have one more state to get through, and that's Kentucky. Then we'll jump into our next readings. Let me share my screen. All right, can everybody see? Okay, perfect. I'll start here with Kentucky. Whereas the federal constitution, which created the government of the United States, was declared by the framers thereof to be the supreme law of the land, and was intended to limit and did expressly limit the powers of said government to certain general specified purposes, and did expressly reserve to the states and people all other powers whatever, and the president and president and Congress have treated the supreme law, this supreme law of the Union with contempt, and usurped to themselves the power to interfere with the rights and liberties of the state and the people against the express provisions of the Constitution, and thus substituted for the highest form of national liberty and constitutional government a central despotism founded upon the ignorant prejudices of the masses of Northern society. And instead of giving protection in the Constitution to the people, 15 states of this union have turned loose upon them the unrestrained and raging passions of mobs and fanatics. And because we now seek to hold our liberties, our property, our homes, and our families under the protection of the reserved powers of the states, have blockaded our ports, invaded our soil, and waged war upon our people for the purpose of subjugating us to their will. All right, so that first one pretty much got Kentucky's viewpoint on how the Union is handling things as far as the secessions or the seceding of these other states, and pretty much them stating their case of why they want to secede. A lot of that last information in regards to the mob, them trying to protect their rights, their liberties, sounds a lot like our native ancestors in regards to the European coming into this land again. I think Kentucky kind of took a playbook out of one of the other states who pretty much stated the same stuff, same information, but this one just seems to be a little bit in more detail, in my opinion here. Let's see.
Can I add
see
one
something
thing
else?
you go forward?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Where we at? Can you highlight? Okay, move your cursor up just a little bit. 2 sentences. One more. And to the left where it says 15 states. You can highlight that part where it says 15 states of this union. So at this point in 1861, it was only 15 states that they established on the land America. And the other part that jumps out to me is if you go down 2 sentences and to the right where it says have blockaded our ports, invaded our soil, and waged war upon our people, that's what we've been showing that happened to the American and to the Confederacies on this land. Here we see they took that same tactic and used it against their own people. When you blockade the ports, you're stopping import export. That's business. That's world trade. So now you can't get world trade with the blockade of ports and then the invasion of the soil. Those are the 2 things that jumped out to me that was a little bit different than these other East states within the Confederacy that collapsed the Free Confederacy. Kentucky and Missouri looks like they're more detailed about what took place and why they're seceding. Chief Quietwater, you want to build on that?
Yeah, I agree. It looks like they're just giving more detail about it. But it pretty much is in line with what all the other states actually stated in their secession as well. But this one does go into a little bit more detail. Nothing too much more.
I agree. I agree. I think this might have been the first one where they actually stated like a blockade of ports. So as Chief Alligator alluded to, them actually stopping trade, stopping them from not only receiving goods but also exporting anything like that. So definitely, there's a lot more detail in this one versus the other ones. Let me see here. Whereas our honor and our duty to posterity demand that we shall not relinquish our liberty and shall not abandon the right of our descendants and the world to the inestimable blessings of constitutional government. Therefore, be it ordained that we do hereby forever sever our connection with the government of the United States, and in the name of the people, we do hereby declare Kentucky to be a free and independent state, clothed with all power to fix her own destiny and to secure her own rights and liberties. So here, what I got from these two paragraphs basically is them pretty much about to get into, I guess, the details of what they'll be seceding from. So of course we know the Union, but also like the other states, things that they want to keep that are compatible with what they want to stand for in Kentucky, and things that they want to pretty much relinquish here. Any thoughts on that or any other key points?
I don't think we've heard that language, forever sever our connection with the government of the United States. That's a real.
I was gonna say that too. Yeah, like indefinitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a lot of strong language being put in this last secession versus the other ones. And whereas the majority of the legislature of Kentucky have violated their most solemn pledges made before the election and deceived and betrayed the people, have abandoned the position of neutrality assumed by themselves and the people, and invited into the state the organized armies of Lincoln, have abdicated the government in favor of a military despotism which they have placed around themselves, but cannot control, and have abandoned the duty of shielding the citizen with their protection, have thrown upon our people and the state the horrors and ravages of war, instead of attempting to preserve the peace, and have voted men and money for the war waged by the North for the destruction of our constitutional rights, have violated the express words of the Constitution by borrowing $5 millions of money for the support of the war without a vote of the people, have permitted the arrest and imprisonment of our citizens, and transferred the constitutional prerogatives of the executive to a military commission of partisan, have seen and writ of habeas corpus suspended without an effort for this preservation, and permitted our people to be driven in exile from their homes, have subjected our property to confiscation and our persons to confinement in the penitentiary of felons as felons, because we may choose to take part in a cause for civil liberty and constitutional government against the sectional majority waging war against the people and institutions of 15 independent states of the old federal union, and have done all these things deliberately against the warnings and vetoes of the governor and the solemn remonstrance of the minority in the Senate and House of Representatives, therefore. So that's a lot to take away there. But basically what I got from that is that it kind of seemed like, what's the word I'm looking for? Insurrection almost. Like insurrection on behalf of, I guess in this part, we the people, like the governors, the senates, it seemed like they didn't vote on anything, kind of just yielded to the power of the president, in making sure that Kentucky as a whole didn't put up a fight. So they didn't, have any type of militia or any arms put up against the actual Union. They wanted to pretty much stop that in its tracks before anything got started. Because it definitely seems like definitely was no voting in regards to anything, pretty much executive order. That's what I got from that whole paragraph.
Yeah, and it seems like they're just outright calling the government out, you know, just blatantly calling them out in regards to what they're just basically calling them out on the acts that they've done against them, as Kentucky, I think. And I looked up that word despotism, and it means absolute power, the exercise of absolute power. So they've used that several times throughout their secession language, which I think this is the first time that I've ever seen that in any of the other ones as well.
Definitely. Any thoughts there, Chief Alligator?
Yeah, I want to pull out a couple of sentences. That third sentence at the top. Come over to the right. A little bit more. Right there, where it says united into the state, the organized armies of Lincoln. So we know from the Constitution that the president controls the Army, Navy, and the militia. So here we see the state basically saying, okay, Congress is supposed to declare war based on their form of government, but they're particularly saying, Lincoln, you're sending an organized army, right? And then if we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, come to your right, by borrowing $5 million of money for the support of the war without a vote of the people. That resonates with me today with all of the fiat that was falling out of the sky and in everybody's mailboxes last year, the $600, the stopping of any debt. Congress voted on it, right? Let me say this correctly. Trump didn't get Congress to participate in that first CARES Act. Trump pretty much did it on his own. Like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to bail out the businesses, da, 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 da. So we can see how we're living parallel to what they were going through, whereas there's no votes taking place. It's just people coming up and just dictating, standing in front of a TV and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. We don't need input. We don't need any delegates coming from these different states to come in Congress assembled and vote on anything. It's already kind of like a dictatorship. That jumps out. And if we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, come to the left, go up 1 where it says in the penitentiary as felons. So we can clearly see that they were arresting their own Europeans and they were incarcerating them. So we can see here why there's so much animosity between the rebel European and the Union European, if you will. Like, we can understand why there's that. This helps me understand why January 6th happened in 2021 of this year, because the people who were put in penitentiaries, the people who were put on military work camps in these Confederate states that were forced to work as prisoners of war as well, I can see how they have the deep resentment against the people from the North of the lineage that came over. You see what I'm saying? Because their great grandfather could have been in prison because he was fighting against the government. So, because they're I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say just that was a great call out.
That's it right there for me. Those 3 things jump out. So, and it's funny because they did the same thing to us, and now they're getting it done to them by their own government.
Correct. I was going to say that. It seems like karma kind of came around in regards to this, as far as, you know, splitting of two, of really one nation, you know, pretty much pitting them against each other. As we saw in the previous treaties, Cherokee helping out the European, fighting against some of the Creeks and different nations. So definitely kind of seems like karma came back, made a full 180 on this one, full 360 on this one. And it also kind of seems like the president was working definitely as commander in chief, but also underneath not martial law, but like a state of emergency type of thing where he had ultimate power in regards to like bypassing Congress and things of that nature. So that kind of parallels to what we were seeing pretty much in like last year's election, and a lot of the prompts of like insurrection going on as well.
Correct. Yep.
See this
they call it war powers, to be exact. They call it war powers. That's what Donald Trump did. Okay. Declared war on an invisible enemy last year. Everybody was saying he can't declare war. Congress declares war. He declared war, and now he's got extra war powers, meaning he doesn't have to go through Congress for a lot of stuff. So Lincoln is kind of in that same situation. He's exercising war powers, so he really don't need Congress. Great bring out.
Let's see this last paragraph. Be it further ordained that the unconstitutional edicts of a factious majority of a legislature thus false to their pledges, their honor, and their interests are not law, and that such a government is unworthy of the support of a brave and free people, and that we do therefore declare that the people are thereby absolved from all allegiances or allegiance to said government, and that they have a right to establish any government which to them may seem best adapted to the preservation of their rights and liberties. Adopted November 20th, 1861 by a convention of the people of Kentucky. So again, we have that people, and we know that to be pretty much anybody in that room, which would usually be your governor, state legislature, state secretary, secretary of state, things of that nature. So again, it wasn't the people of the state of Kentucky, but a small minority, which was that state's government. I'm trying to see here anything else that stood out to me. Other than that, everything was pretty much ran parallel to the other states as far as their secessions. This is the last state that did succeed, and again, this was November 20th, 1861. And why that's important, we'll get into that a little bit later. But any key takeaways from that?
I just want to make sure that I said it correctly earlier when I said 15 states that the United States government had. Can we count each state real quick on this document just to see how many Confederate states it was?
Definitely.
One.
South Carolina, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. 13.
Okay, so that means that 13 were Confederate, because they said in that document, or 15, right? So that's, it sounds like 15 were Confederate and only 2 remaining would have been United States government.
That's what it's reading like to me.
Where was that at? Just before we move on, I just want to make sure I wasn't wrong.
Where did I see 15? Here you go. People 15 of this union.
Okay. So only 15 at that time. So 13 of them pulled out.
Wow.
So Lincoln had an issue on his hand. Now we're on the outside looking at their issue. So Lincoln, the majority of his states under his government succeeded. That makes sense why the emancipation was done. And, we'll get into that next year. But yeah, it makes sense now why he had to release prisoners of war that were under United States government occupation, because he needed more manpower. The manpower was with the Confederates, not with the United States government.
Correct. And I think that's a good segue into what we'll get into here next, as far as the accounting of these people, of the European, who like to call themselves the American here. Let me see if we can get this on one of these. Pull this up here. I think it was down here. Let's zoom in a little bit. See if I can make it bigger. Okay. How's that look on your screen?
If you can make it bigger, if you can come. Okay.
I think I wanted to go to somewhere where it stated the northern before we get into these slaveholders. Might have been over here anyway. So we take a look here where it says slaveholders. We're just going to read this off here. Of the 6,222,418 white inhabitants of the South, only 347,525 are owners of slaves, and yet this faction controls every branch of the federal government and wields its influence for the increase and perpetuation of slavery. Classification of slaveholders in 1850. So just off of that sentence alone shows pretty much what we just stated as far as the power that these slave-holding or prisoner of war holding states had. It says here, and yet this faction controls every branch of the federal government and wields its influence for the increase and perpetuation of slavery. So we just saw that out of those 15 states, 13 seceded. Out of the 15 states underneath the Union, 13 of those states seceded from it. So that in itself shows the power, and again, as Chief Alligator was stating, shows the what Lincoln was going up against as far as manpower. Just to re-emphasize who the actual slave was on that quote unquote transatlantic slave trade, we're going to just take a look here at, again, where it's stated, and again, this is their documentation. They account for everything. So we take a look here, 1850, holders of one slave, 68,000, a little over 68,000.
1 second, if you don't mind, before you go into that. Can you go back up to that sentence you just read? I just did the math on something real quick. I got to move the screen because it's, okay, we're good. Oh, no, you good.
Look better? Okay.
I'm moving us. Okay. If you divide that 6,222,418, 347,000, only 5% of Europeans were slave owners. And then they say in that next sentence, and yet this faction, the 5%, controls every branch of their federal government. 5%.
The 5%ers
of that 6 million people were the actual movers and shakers, the shot callers. Go ahead. I didn't mean to stop you. I just wanted to throw that in so we can get a nut, because we're doing numbers now. The language of business is accounting. It shows the gift that the European brought to the world with how they accounted for this. But go ahead.
No, great point. Great point. Because that's important to know. Again, only 5% of the Europeans had slaves or were slaveholders, and again, controlled every branch of the federal government.
Wow.
So that pretty much parallels to what we're seeing today as far as, again, those, call them 1%ers, but for this case, 5%ers who control pretty much everything. Why can't this company fail? Because it's controlling every part of this government. So again, this kind of even parallels out to today. But as we get into this accounting here, holders of 1 and under 5 slaves, 105,683. So majority of this 5% only had at max 5 slaves or 5 prisoners of war. This is 1850. And of course, as the numbers increase in the amount of prisoners of war, the number of slave or prisoner of war holders decreases.
Right.
So pretty much holders of 500 or more was 11. Only 11 slaveholders had a max of 500 or more. So this in itself, and again, that comes up to this total here, 347,525. 347,525. Now, if we take a look here in the congressional representation, the United States Senate, 16 free states with a white population of 13,238,670 white population had 32 senators. But the important thing here is the amount they're counting for. 15 slave states with a white population of 6 million have 30 senators. So we're looking at a combination of 19, a little bit over 19 million white population, white men basically. So we take that number, 19 million, and again, they've already accounted for majority of the slaves here, stating that, you know, not a lot of people even had over 500. There's no way you can tell us that on this transatlantic slave trade, Africans were the ones being sent over here constantly. They just stated 19 million Europeans are accounted for on this land called America. Any thoughts on that?
It's just mighty funny how throughout this whole year that we've done this, that nothing is hidden. I mean, I've said this over and over and over, that things are just right here in black and white for us to see it for ourselves. And just looking at that and the narrative and the story, and now the numbers in detail just don't make sense in regards to it was us that was being brought over here. It just doesn't make sense.
Correct.
I'll add on to that as well, Chief Quietwater. If 19 million white people were in America, I'm gonna ask y'all too and ask the world, how did they get in America from Europe? They're counting for 19 million. How did they get in America? In 1850, how did 19 million of them end up in America? No, I'm just asking both y'all that question. How did they get over?
I mean, they had to get over here, and that had to be on ships.
Ships that they said
over the water.
So we know, based on their own record, 19 million.
Their own records.
You were the Atlantic slave trade, because we know 19 million of y'all came by 1850.
Right.
Now let's go back up to what Chief Biko was saying with the holders of 500 or 1,000, holders of 500 and under 1,000, only 9. So the question that I have for all the scholars who are melanated and who are American but continue to pump the African narrative on us, everybody was not a prisoner of war. And we also have to understand that word slave, they reconstructed it and they use that term to not make you think that your ancestors fought and were actually under military occupation.
Correct.
To be a Fortune 500 in 2021, you have to have 500 or more employees. So there was only 11 owners in 1850 that had 500 people under military occupation on what you would call a plantation. Only 11 in the whole South. So where are we getting this idea that everybody was on a military work camp? It's mathematically impossible. The most that they had was 5 people, which Chief Biko's cursor is right by. You can see the largest number was 105,000. Y'all had 5 people. You probably had 2 women to clean up your house. and 3 men out there working the land.
Wow, that's crazy.
Correct.
This is y'all numbers. We're looking at them right now. Big business was only 11. You had 11 big business military occupation operations going on, only 11. Most of y'all, they had 5 people. Which is why small business to this day is still the engine of their economy. It drops off drastically. What, 80,000 had 10, 4,000 had 20, 29,000 had 50, only 6,000 had 100. So this idea that we all come from plantations, which y'all want to see. I mean,
it's right here. It's no, yeah.
We didn't debunk that.
Yeah.
We have to debunk that. And all through their own accounting. Again,
right
here, look at the bottom. Let's see, freedom versus slavery, comparison of the chief statistics of the free states and of the slave states according to the U.S. Census of 1850.
Okay.
Again, accounting, the U.S. Census, folks.
So this is true, accurate information.
Now, where's the color code on this map where it breaks down the colors so we can explain to people looking at this what we're looking at? There should be a key somewhere on that map where it talks about the colors we're looking at. Maybe at the bottom. On here?
I don't see anything.
Okay. So let's go all the way to the left at the bottom and let's start with that first category. And let's see so we can break it down that way real quick. If you can blow that up where Maine. Okay. So the free states. What color is Maine on that map? That's how we're gonna have to do it. What color would Maine be on the map?
Pink.
Okay. Okay. All right. So these are free states. Okay, got it. So now we can kind of look at that table and understand. Okay. So this is military occupation because that first column says area in square miles. There's no way that you can be that exact without military roping off that area. And saying that we can do business in this square mile radius and we don't have to worry about interference, cut off of supply chains. You know what I'm saying? So we can see Maine had 31,000 square miles. So we can go down that whole list and see what they were military occupying in 1850 as far as square miles is concerned in each one of the estates that they established. Then we can go over there to the next category where it says population. And we can get an idea how many Europeans were in every state of these 16 that they established. And this is key. They can account for every European that came across the Atlantic. Why? Because there was a document that was attached to them when they left Europe. And then there was a document provided to them when they came into New York through Ellis Island. Y'all with me? Now, the next column next to whites is free color. Those are Americans.
Correct.
But you can already see they're starting to reclassify in 1850 by calling them free color. No, these are Americans. And for whatever reason, the military could not get them under occupation. You with me?
Correct.
Because slavery isn't abolished. So if the European wanted to put them under military occupation, what was stopping them? How could you have free colors when you have an abolished outright slavery of people? So we can see how many, based on the state, how many free Americans were in their jurisdiction that they couldn't do nothing to. And your largest states were New York, had 49,000 free Americans. New Jersey, 23,000. Pennsylvania, 53,000. Ohio, 25,000. And then you see the next column over says slaves.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to kind of read what it says here. It says the census erroneously reports 236 persons in New Jersey under the caption of slaves. In that state, slavery was provisionally abolished in 1784. All children born of a slave after 1804 were free. In 20. 26 slaves were reported from Utah on their way to California. That's what that says in this slaves column here.
So we can clearly see there was not a lot of prisoners of war in 1850 in those 15 states.
At all, right?
Correct.
They even broke it down, if you want to go a little further, right? The cash values of farms in those 15 states. Maine had 54 million in cash value.
Again, the highest values, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Pretty much the same amount as the population.
Now, what's interesting is, so their cash, so New York had the highest value of cash farm, but then if you go over to New York's table and look at how many whites they had, which was 3 million, and then you had 50,000 Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So who was generating all of that revenue for the estate of New York? It was their own people.
Yeah.
The numbers tell the story.
Correct.
That's crazy.
What's your thoughts on this, Chief Quietwater?
I mean, I'm looking at it. It's obvious. The numbers are depicting the story.
Mm-hmm.
How what their story was that they labeled us as, being the slaves and everything is showing here that was not the case.
Right.
With their own accounting records and methods. They broke it down meticulously.
And this, I don't know if this ties in, Chief Biko, to where you want to go next, but you got to remember they're accounting the way they are, Chief Quietwater, because they're working on behalf of kings and queens from Europe. So those kings and queens are like, I count my money. I need to know what's coming on that boat when you send that money.
Right.
Correct.
Wow.
Before we jump into that, definitely wanted to show this one as well. It's actually behind Chief Alligator. I'm going to blow it up so everybody can see exactly that. Not all of them were, let's say, prisoner of war holding states, but some were also prisoner of war exporting states. And it'll be pretty much depicted here. I'm going to go and highlight the key explanation of the colors. Free states and territories colored green. The dark green shows the free settled states and the light green, the territories. Slave holding states colored red. The dark red shows slave importing states and the light red, slave exporting states. So again, slave importing states, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And then we have here the light red, these are the slave exporting states. So we got Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. So if we catch you here in any of these, we'll just say pink states, we're sending you to these camps in these areas. That's how that worked. So that's how that worked there. Let me see if I can see get the year.
Hold on one second. Hold on 1 second before you leave that, which I just want to add on what you just said. If they catch you in those states, if you can just bring that back a little bit bigger. We already know from the American Removal Act of 1830, that was when they were shipping Americans that were east of the Mississippi to the west. Those that they did not move west of the Mississippi, can you take your cursor and let people see where the Mississippi is on this map? Boom.
Right there.
If you did not go west of the Mississippi and you remained east and they caught you in one of those light red states, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, they would send you into one of their, like Chief Biko just said, one of their military work camp estates.
Mm-hmm.
So the human trafficking of Americans was within America.
Correct.
It was, we're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Just
it's always been human trafficking. Yep. On America of Americans too.
Correct.
Of Americans. So if we catch you in South Carolina, more than likely you're getting sent to Georgia, Tennessee, maybe Arkansas, but possibly more than likely here, because I believe here, because as Chief Alligator stated, they were removing them west of the Mississippi in the American Removal Act. So why would we even want to allow you the opportunity to even try to reconnect with your family? We're gonna send you down here and we're gonna fuck you up. Jim Crow, redlining, Civil Rights Act in the 60s. All that is the reason why, and pretty much just shows, military occupation as well. Human trafficking and military occupation.
And it just shows too how organized again they were and how precise their plans were to execute on every level their master plan and their end goal.
They were diligent, definitely diligent.
I'm thinking about the prison system right now. Just looking at this map, most of us, we have somebody in our family that's in prison, in a state prison facility. And I'm just looking at how they got the concept of capturing you, let's say in Atlanta, and shipping you to South Georgia. It's the same thing they did. They would catch you to the Mississippi. They might just ship you down from Carolina to Georgia, but your ball bearings, you're going to be disoriented. You don't know where you went.
Correct. Great point.
You're in a whole nother landmass. No, you're just in another area of America.
Correct. Great point.
That just triggered in my mind. What year was this map? Did he have?
That's what I wanted to see. They have it here.
1857.
You see 1857.
Created in public.
Created. Okay, yeah. 1857 here.
So this is
7 years after the map that we just saw. Or the census here. And look, they go hand in hand, people.
Right.
So
grayed out area.
Let's go back to that other map real quick. I just want y'all, my brain is running. Let's look at those green, those dark green. That would be the Union.
Correct.
That's the Union, y'all, because we're going into the Civil War. Those dark green states are the United States government. Those are the settled areas where the United States government does business. Those light red and dark red, that's the Confederacy. Is it safe to say that Maine is not really up north, but up south? Follow me here. Follow me here. Back out just a little bit so we can see Florida. Okay. The South sits higher than the estates in the North. we're elevated. We're above sea level. So what we think is north is really up south. Are y'all following me?
In regards to the elevation of the land, okay.
Yeah, we're above sea level in the south.
Gotcha.
Up north, they're sea level.
Got you.
So
Okay.
who's really up north? That's my question to y'all. Who think about we're higher in the south above sea level. So who is really in the south?
It would be these quote unquote the northern states.
It's just flip.
So they had to work their way up to our ancestors that were in what we think is the south. They had to work their way up elevation.
Because this area here, Appalachian, I know that's gotta be a native name. These are mountains right here.
Right.
This is all blocked off from mountains. So
now
like
that
you
is
stated,
right. Because going to Ohio, you're going up the mountains.
Okay.
Going when you're traveling to Ohio, you're actually going up.
So where's Ohio on the map? Just so we can get an idea where, okay, right there. Okay.
So you start hitting those mountains right after in Tennessee, in like Knoxville.
Okay.
Right in this area. So they have a lot of those cabins and stuff where people can go.
Okay.
And,
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, they start actually in North Georgia, actually.
Yeah, Blue Ridge area into now what?
Gatlinburg,
correct.
Okay,
Right
so just brainstorming. Does that make sense? That
yeah, now that you said that, I never thought of it that way, that you are actually ascending when you're traveling.
So they were able to conquer the Iroquois Confederacy because that was at sea level coming from Europe. So it took them a couple of 100 years to get that area conquered before they started going up the mountains, as you said, before they started ascending. So we're not down south.
Right.
Correct. We're above, because we're above what would be considered the northern part of this landmass.
The land is more depressed down south than it is going north.
The land.
Right? I mean, it's more, like you said, it's at sea level, so it's lower.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So the last thing I'll add on that, just so people looking at this map, if you're looking at it, the dark green is going to be what the United States government is representing. And all the red is going to be the Confederate.
Correct.
So we also have to understand that America is the land. The United States is not the land. That is a government, a fictional government. Because if we think about the whole map of America, wouldn't what you know is Canada? Isn't that America?
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
Yes.
It's on the map. Yep.
It's on the land. Wouldn't Mexico? Isn't that America?
Correct.
So you see how they programmed us through school to think on imaginary lines that, oh, Canada is something separate from America. Y'all following me?
Yeah.
Because when you look at Canada, they got you thinking, oh, that's Canada. No, that's America.
Yeah.
It's the same land. Just like we look at Mexico, Donald Trump with his border, he's like, oh, we got illegals coming from Mexico. How? They're Americans. Mexico was on the land.
Correct.
Right.
It's like we're backward.
No, it's a great point. Great point. We're all Americans, but they aren't. And they're trying to convince everybody that they aren't.
Right.
They're not illegal. If anybody's illegal, it's the European that has tried to classify themselves as American. But like you said, they're trying to get everybody in a state of confusion. Like, no, you're the real illegal immigrant, basically. And that just puts us into where we're going to go now. And I think this one just going to put a nail in the coffin, if you ask me, what we're about to share with you all. Let me see here. All right, are you all able to see it? I'm gonna make it a little bigger. So again, this is just going to pretty much solidify that we, first of all, a confederacy is a native government of this land. So when we're talking about the Confederacy versus the Union, that was a stolen title by as we saw, the slave prisoner of war occupying states. And this is going to pretty much just prove that here in this treaty with the Delawares, 1778. So treaty with the Delawares, and you're probably thinking, isn't that a state? Isn't that a state? But no, it's actually a nation of our Aboriginal people of this land. So we'll read here, start here, Article 3. And whereas the United States are engaged in a just and necessary war in defense and support of life, liberty, and independence against the King of England. Again, that sounds familiar, exactly what they were just stating in regards to the secessions. But as we can see here, against the King of England. So how can you be American and still trying to get your life, liberty, and independence from England? It doesn't work, can't go hand in hand. But we'll continue. And his adherents, and as said king is yet possessed of several posts and forts on the lakes and other places, the reduction of which is of great importance to the peace and security of the contracting parties, and as the most practicable way for the troops of the United States to some of the posts and forts is by passing through the country of the Delaware Nation. The country of the Delaware Nation, people. So let's just kind of rewind and tie this all in. It says here, the reduction of which is of great importance to the peace and security of the contracting parties, and as the most practicable way for the troops of the United States, again, not the Americans, the United States, its citizens, to some of the posts of the forts is by passing through the country of the Delaware Nation. We already had our own nations. That's what this treaty is about, the treaty with the Delaware. Treaty with Delaware Nation to allow these Europeans who are trying to establish their own government, i.e. United States, to pass through to try to get their independence from England. It's right here, people. They're not the Americans. They're not the Americans. Do you want to jump on that there, Chief Alligator?
I'll let Chief Quietwater go first.
Okay.
You just turn your volume just a little bit because Chief Biko echoes when he's talking. That's why I was.
I mean, right, again, in black and white, it says that, why are you trying to gain your life, liberty, and independence against the King of England? I mean, that says it all. There's nothing else to be said. The nail in the coffin, as you said.
Yeah, you dropped the bomb, Chief Biko. We can see this is 1778. So this is 2 years after they formed their government, July 4th, 1776. And this is 1 year prior to them ratifying, or all of their representatives from the 15 states that they had created all voted and agreed on the Constitution. We can see that the European, here's our problem as quote unquote prisoners of war, Black, Afro-American, Negro, colored. We have to understand you are not a part of the United States government until after the Civil War. This is a European form of government. They're asking another nation on this land, the Delaware Nation, can we use, correct, can we pass through your forts? That means there was a military. The Delaware Nation had a military. You cannot have a nation without armed protection. This idea that the people on this land, well, we know they had protection because there was too many wars. But yeah, it's exposing it right here that they had to ask the Americans of the Delaware Nation, can y'all help us? Because these kings from England are on our ass. We done fucked around and declared our independence July 4th, 1776. And the king in England is like, nah, y'all gonna continue to pay that tax to your parent land.
Correct. And that even, I guess, emphasizes another point of how we're prisoners of war, not slaves. Forts, nations, nah. We put up a fight. We put up a fight. We weren't just, some docile people who, again, they brought from some part of Africa and never put up any resistance. No, we had to. Again, like you just stated, we had forts, a nation. We allowed them to pass through. The aforesaid deputies, on behalf of themselves and their nation, do hereby stipulate and agree to give a free passage through their country to the troops aforesaid, and the same to the conduct by the nearest and best ways to the posts, forts, or towns of the enemies of the United States. The enemies being England. Right. They was, again, like Chief Alligator stated, they were asking for our help, our protection. Wow. Our protection.
That is
like
crazy.
He stated, they was trying to get their independence from their parent company.
And it's just broken down so clear, like so clear for people to understand. If this was taught in history books, boy, oh boy, I tell you.
Correct.
Now, if we go a little bit deeper, we know we were given a protection. Go a little bit deeper, Chief Biko. What else were we doing for them? So we knew we were protecting them as they were running from the king's armies in Europe, which we ain't got nothing to do with that because we're not from Europe. So basically, we got these peasants running up to us like, hey, we done messed up. We done messed around and declared our independence from our king. Can you protect us? We're like, yeah, you can come to our towns or whatever, but they're like, well, we need a little bit more than that. We need a little bit more than a pass through. What else you need? Tell them what else they asked for, Chief Biko.
Let's see what else they asked for. Affording to said troops such supplies of corn, meat, horses, or whatever may be in their power for the accommodation of such troops on the commanding officers, etc. Paying or engaging to pay the full value of whatever they can supply with them. So again, quote unquote, we the savages, but we're supplying all of these resources. Again, and that just goes to our, what we always state, our American inventor. We was the ones creating all these things, had these supplies, had these nations, and this pretty much just proves that. Delaware nation. And again, there were multiple nations, which we'll get into a little bit later after this, multiple nations. So this is just one nation that they're asking. Again, this US government is asking one nation for these resources. So just put that in
read a little bit
context.
Can you read a little bit further down? Because we're even protecting their women, children, and their elderly.
And said duties on the behalf of their nation engaged to join the troops of the United States aforesaid with a such number of their best and most expert warriors as they can spare, consistent with their own safety, and act in concert with them and for the better security of the old men, women, and children of the aforesaid nation. Whilst their warriors are engaged against the common enemy, it is agreed on part of the United States and a fort of, let me see what we got here. Scroll up. Fort of sufficient strength and capacity be built at the expense of the said states, which such assistance as it may be in the power of the said Delaware nation to give in most convenient place in advantageous situations as shall be agreed on by the commanding officer of the troops aforesaid, and with the advice and concurrence of the deputies of the aforesaid Delaware nation, which fort shall be garrisoned by such a number of troops of the United States as the commanding officer can spare for the present, and hereafter by such numbers as the wise men of the United States in council shall think most conducive to the common good. But as Chief Alligator stated, to protect their old men, women, and children. They needed the Americans to even try to think of this stuff that we're talking about in 1861 with this quote unquote Civil War. They needed the Americans. And as Chief Quietwater stated, this wasn't taught in them history books. From what I remember, they called on the French, other European nations to assist them, which of course took time. So by the time they got there, I'm pretty sure the asses would have been handed to them, and it would have been no United States unless a nation was already on this land to aid them. So right there,
they
people,
totally flipped the script.
Yeah, flip the script. That's just, and this is pretty much filling that hole in that narrative.
Yeah.
And if we notice in this treaty, they're going in the treaty with the United States, not the military.
Correct.
So we see what happened up north, up south, if you will. We see what happened in the Creek Confederacy. Their rogue military was going in the treaty in the Creek Confederacy. Here, the United States was going to this Delaware nation and basically like, look, we need protection. We'll even finance if y'all build new forts and put your people in it. It said that on the previous page that you just read. The United States government was going into debt with the Delaware nation. Like, look, we're going to pay you back for whatever fort that you build. So it's almost like, dang, we let y'all do business and set up a government on the land. Now you got people coming from Europe waging war on it. What y'all got going on? It's almost like we created a monster by letting them come over here.
Correct. Should have fed the ass to the dog. Y'all go back over there with y'all parents, man. We ain't watching y'all no more. It's like we was watching somebody else's kids, and them kids then it was really agents for their parents. Really agents for their parents, or we watching somebody else's kids and we give them our supposed to be children inheritance to them.
Exactly.
Can never win like that. Cannot win. And as I was stating before, with these treaties, it wasn't just one nation, people. Treaty with the Six Nations, 1784. So what is that? 6 years after the treaty with Delaware, we come here. And I believe it was right here. Yeah, right here, treaty with the Six Nations. And it is further agreed on between the contracting parties, should it for the future be found conducive for the mutual interests of both parties, the United States government, and of course the Confederacy, which we'll see here, or the nation, Delaware nation, to invite any other tribes who have been friends to the interests of the United States to join the present Confederation and to form a state whereof the Delaware nation shall be the head and have a representation in Congress.
Can you highlight that?
I'm actually to join presented right there.
That's proof, people. American form of government is Confederacy. So when you think these rednecks are running around with these rebel Confederate flags, they're actually mocking our ancestors. This is proof out of the Treaty of 1784 with the Six Nations. The United States government wanted to join the Confederation and give up a seat in their Congress to the head of the Delaware nation. Chief Quietwater?
Yeah, it's just amazing how they literally, everything is just right in your face. Everything is right in your face, and the lack of knowledge that we have of this information kind of continues to set us back, or keep us stagnant in regards to where we are, to know that we had this much power. We created everything. They needed us on every level of their master plan. They had to utilize us in some kind of way, shape, or form to get to where they needed, where they needed to be. And we have to recognize that in order for us to move forward and create our own plan. Because as we can see that this was not, it didn't take a massive amount of people, as we noted, throughout this whole thing with the secessions and the signing of the Constitution and things like that. It takes a small portion of people to just get a plan, follow through with it, and execute it. So this is just evident.
And if we look at the signatures on this document real, just to tie into what Quiet Water said, it's always 10% of the people do 90% of the work. So we're that small percentage that are cracking these codes. But let's look at the signatures. If you can highlight Andrew Lewis, Thomas Lewis, White Eyes, The Pipe, John Kilbuck. If that doesn't sound like quote unquote ghetto nicknames, come on, we always been giving ourselves nicknames, so we're seeing that's an American thing. Buddy named White Eyes. Come on, his name White Eyes.
We didn't stray away from our native culture.
Right.
You know, even though we were separated, a lot of our culture today is still rooted in our Aboriginal culture. So a lot of it, you know, yeah, some of the language maybe has been lost, but as far as like Chief Alligator alluded to, nicknames, other stuff, dances, we still took that, not even realizing subconsciously. That's how it's ingrained in us. People, we are the Americans. And like you just stated, Wide Eyes, The Pipe, John Kilbuck. Them are rap names today. You know what I'm saying? Those are our rap names, are leaders type of names, like in the streets. Oh, you don't mess with White Eyes. He gonna mess you up. Like, we still kept a lot of the stuff that we had traditionally, or we thought was you know, missing or had we forgotten. We still keep that. It's ingrained in us.
I see one more flaw before we move on. I see one more flaw.
What's that?
This treaty of 1784 is actually invalid. So we see the Americans that signed, correct?
Correct.
Who were the Europeans there that signed?
That had to be these two.
In the presence of who? That's the Europeans under the in presence of, well, right, those are the Americans, but who are the Europeans? What United States of what treaty was that we read that the United States had actual members from their government sign? This is their military.
In presence of Black Macintosh, Brigadier General.
You got a Brigadier General. You got Colonel.
I don't know who the hell John Campbell and John Stevenson is. Then he had their title.
They're not government officials because they would have their title, right? Secretary of something or, right. So this is the military. Here again, going into contract with the Delaware Nation. So if their military was going into treaties and not United States government officials, I think we're proving the case. These people got to get off the land. Your supreme law of the land was invalid from the beginning because you don't have United States government officials on this treaty.
Correct. And this is the one that was inviting you into a partnership with a nation, but you don't even have your shit together, your members here present. So yeah, you gotta go. You gotta go.
You signed fake treaties.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it. You had captains, majors, colonels, and brigadier generals representing the United States government. But you didn't have no United States government secretary, president, commander-in-chief. There's no official from your government at this treaty signing. So it's not a treaty.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all with me?
No, you're right. It's void. It's invalid, like the rest of the most of the treaties you've read, as far as the Treaty of Moultrie Creek I believe the last other was Payne's Landing. And no U.S. government representative. So those to show you people, again, military occupation to join the present Confederation. They didn't have a Confederation. Who did? Our ancestors, the Americans. So again, this is further proof. And then here, again, this just stood out to me that Anno Domini. It's funny how they said it out now in the other treaties, but they use, I guess, the, what would this be, Latin or something? Term in the years of our Lord. But in the other treaties, they wrote it out in English. So maybe that's also showing the difference with them still being, I guess, at war or battling with England or something of the sort. But that definitely stood out to me because it's the only one I've seen this that phrase used.
I'm gonna throw one more thing in. I can see how this is going to cause conflict because if the military is telling these leaders of the Delaware Nation, hey, you'll have a seat within our Congress, but there's no United States representative there. So when those Delaware Nation representatives go to that Congress meeting, you're gonna have those congressmen looking like, who are these people? And then you got those Delaware Nation people saying, well, we got this treaty here. But they didn't know about it because the military signed it. There was no official United States government member there. So they lied.
Correct.
You're thinking you're going to be a part of their Congress and you're going to be able to oversee what their government does because they're on your land. Y'all following me?
Yeah.
You see the little annotated note to the right to have a representation in Congress on certain conditions? But those United States government officials are going to be like, none of us signed that document. What you talking about?
That just opens up another door. Well, if none of you signed it, then y'all got to get the hell on.
Right.
That's my point. We're starting to realize all these treaties are probably null and void. They're fake treaties.
Yep.
Great catch on that.
Let's see here.
We 10 after now, so we 20 after.
We're gonna wrap it up here. But that's just gonna lead us people into the Emancipation Proclamation, which we'll again get into next year, beginning of the fiscal quarter. But yeah, people, if we haven't explained it in this half a year in regards to who we are on this land, then I'm not sure what else we need to show you. We'll continue to beat it across the head, beat it across everyone's head until they realize, but outside of that, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We have everything recorded, documented up on YouTube. You can find it. Post the links in the description. Read it for yourselves. You make a mistake, point it out.
Are we going to drop links on this one, Chief B? Are we dropping the links? All these links that we have?
I have them already.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
And I'll add them in the on the video.
Okay, so Chief B, I don't want to stop you, Bill. I just wanted to make sure that we're going to back up what he just said. We're dropping proof of claim. If anybody sees otherwise, go in the comment section or call it. Yeah, I mean, we already know we telling the truth and we showing it.
Correct. Not hiding anything. And they aren't either, which is crazy. So let's see here. I'll go ahead and read the 12 steps to close us out. All right. Number 1, learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. 2, who established that estate. 3, what nation and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European. I hope that number 3 starts to make a little bit more sense, especially after showing that last treaty. Number 4, ask all nonprofit organizations you attend what's your position on reparations. Number 5, they either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then immediately children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3 and field trips to ADOS landmarks in that city, county, and state. 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. That's one more people until we are in the next fiscal year. Number 7, avoid spending money with any small businesses that don't hire your people, gas stations, nail salons, subways, etc. Number 8, all businesses need operating cash, spend money with American businesses. Number 9, all other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive, set the trends of making other groups follow our lead, and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Number 10, the US government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e. quantitative easing. It also burns money, i.e. quantitative tightening. The US dollar has been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the Gold Standard Act. The government operates off the full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American descendants of slavery no longer have faith in the US government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Number 11, teach your kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. Have them learn about an American inventor. B, have them know about our heroes. C, they should know the European that conquered the estate you live in. D, they should know the nation of people prior to European invasion, militarily and culturally. 12, practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the United States government. Every state American descendants of slavery live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This in 13 weeks, 1 fiscal quarter, will bring us together for our common cause. Let's see, next we'll have Chief Alligator read off the American inventor for this week.
Okay, I'll close out with Granville T. Woods one more time. Granville T. Woods was born to free Americans. And tonight I'm going to do the amusement apparatus. And the federal patent number is going to be 639692. And the date for this invention was December 19th, 1899. And it relates to an amusement apparatus in which racetracks are used. So we can see there would be no racetrack if it wasn't for Granville T. Woods. He's the Lord of it. He's the creator of it. And Chief Biko has the image pulled up. Can you bring that a little bit? Can you make that a little bigger for somebody? Yeah.
Can you repeat that patent number one more time?
Okay. That's going to be federal patent number 639692. And notice that a lot of these inventions, this just clicked in my mind. Most of these inventions are in the late 1800s after the Civil War. So as Chief Biko stated previously, we were reading about the Delaware Nation. And we understand that the Creek Confederacy had nations: Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole. We already had these things. But once the European form of government, called the United States government, started to military occupy the land from sea to shining sea, we then had to come up under their government and register what we already had. Are y'all following me?
Mm-hmm.
The federal patent number is the United States government's patent number. We were already doing these things. They just had to re-register it under their government now, because their government, as their government gained more land in America, that means American nations and confederacies were collapsing. You can't have one without losing the other, because remember, before the Civil War, they put the Americans that they were going to do business with in Oklahoma. So everybody that did not go to Oklahoma as the Seminole War played out and as the Civil War played out, those that did not go into Oklahoma Territory, we're going to get tagged through their census and their birth records as Negro. And then we'll go into colored, then we go into black, then we go into Afro-American, and now here we are with people of color. So we have to, we've already painted the whole movement. Just want to throw that in, that we already had all this stuff. They walked into amusement parks and everything, and that's why they call it the New World. They had never seen this. They never seen refrigerators and washers and dryers and all of these different things. They never saw it. Cars, transmissions. He and Granville T. Wood invented the transmission, so you wouldn't have a car if it wasn't for the transmission.
Correct. Great point. Great point.
Anything y'all want to say before the end of the year, since this is the last one for 2021?
I need to read my stuff.
Jump into the quote as well as the legal definitions of remove point.
Okay, so I'll start with the quote, the Carter G. Woodson quote, and I'm going to do quote number 6. Leadership is usually superimposed for the purpose of directing the course of an ostracized group along the same lines. This was accomplished during the days of slavery by restricting the assembly of Negroes to certain times and places and compelling them to meet in the presence of a stipulated number of wisest and discreetest men of the community. These supervisors of the conduct of Negroes would prevent them from learning the truth, which might make them unruly or ambitious to become free. All right, so that definitely goes hand in hand with all of excuse me, everything that we have been reading about things just not being the truth. Maroon historical points. Number 1 was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number 3, Maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number 4, Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. Number 5, Maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans. And then the legal definitions. Number 1, Americans, a native of America. Number 2, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number 5, school, an institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. And number 6, education and enlightening experience.
Can you read the definition of prisoner of war one more time?
Prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime.
Okay, in wartime, a person or soldier. Did the Civil War ever end?
No treaty was signed.
So anybody who was captured during the Civil War, correct? Did the Third Seminole War ever end?
Nope.
No.
Okay, so anybody captured or came under occupation from then to now, you're what?
Prisoner of war.
The war never ended. You said you got to be captured during wartime. These wars never end.
Yep.
Just change names. Just change names. Let's see here. I think we got one thing. Just gonna read off the constitutional, what is actual constitutional money. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or epistle, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender and payment of debts. So again, this one should should hit home a little bit more, especially after seeing that last treaty we just pulled out, stating that, you know, present confederation, meaning that there was a confederation already here, and it's saying that no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. So that in itself, with the U.S. government's army, because we again stated that there was a representative of the U.S. government who signed that treaty, but even if they did, that would go against their own constitution, because that would be basically entering into again that confederation.
Can you share the slide?
Yes.
Just so they can see as you finish up, just so.
Let me see. It's a little bigger. But again, right here, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. And we just saw in that treaty with the Six Nations, 1784, it said present into the present confederation. This right here, this first sentence contradicts that whole treaty. We already saw that it's void because no U.S. government representative signed it, but also it would have been void considered with their constitution or put against their constitution, since that was a confederation. Back out a little bit here.
Which you further expose military occupation as well, because the military keeps doing these bogus treaties.
Correct. It's almost as if it was, and it probably was designed that way to make sure we can't, because if we do, it'll void our whole constitution. So you all have to be the ones to make this look real. If that makes any sense.
For? I'm saying from a reparations standpoint from us, what are they going to fight for if you know your treaties are invalid because you had your military going in the fake supreme law of the land? What are they going to fight for? What do you, both of y'all, what would they stand on to fight for when you're wrong? You created fake supreme law of the land documents. You got nothing to stand on.
Be hard to fight for anything. Be hard too.
Very hard. Very hard.
And I think that's probably what also led to the splitting of their nation, their government, with the Civil War. That exact thing that you just stated there, Chief Alligator. And here, Article 6, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So again, if the treaties are the supreme law of the land, and the U.S. government constantly has their military go into treaties with real nations, real governments, then it's just exposing that their whole document, their whole process is fictitious, it's fake. They don't even go by what they're stating in their own constitution.
I mean, what could be a flaw, Chief Alligator, Chief Quiet Word? What could be a flaw in that? Because we know the military is signing these treaties, but there's no representative of the United States government. So how could they try to wiggle out of that? Because it's not I'm thinking it's not valid. There are no treaties except for one that we've read. So like, what are you going to stand on? If you're the European, what are you standing on other than the fact that what you going to burn everything down now and just say, you know what, what's your thoughts?
That's what it is.
They're basically just used to everyone just going along, and a lot of people don't know this information. So that's how they've skated through all this time, in my opinion. Nobody has come up against these treaties or this stuff. There's been no defense.
Correct. I believe, like Chief Quietwater says, there's been no real case made against it to bring these up in. Of course, bringing this up in this its government would be almost pointless. So I guess bringing this case to who? You know what I'm saying? Like, who would it be a world court? Or again, I guess it could be their parent company, since again, this is a corporation, present this information to England, or, you know, and then go about it that way, possibly. But as far as bringing this information up to, like, who would that entity be?
I don't even think you need a world court, because you're trying to follow some type of procedure when there really is no procedure. Because if you got fake supreme law of the land, then you can't call a venue where it's got to be heard in, because it's bullshit from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, yeah, why would I want to follow any kind of procedure? Like, oh, well, you have to go here. And no, because there is no treaty.
Yeah, there wasn't a procedure followed in the first place. So correct. Makes sense. Just really the only thing that's keeping this, again, when we've already, you know, debunked that or exposed that, is the military occupation. They got guns, our people don't. We gonna play by your rules, plain and simple. Plain and simple. Once we arm ourselves, again, like the Maroon historical points say, again, like any nation, then we can go about it in another way. But right now, they hold the power through their military.
All right, we ran a little long today, so well, it's the last one of the year. We got what? Anybody want to say anything as we go through 2021, as we get up out of 2021?
I just want to say I appreciate all of the chiefs on this channel, especially Chief Quietwater as well as Chief Alligator. Having, you know, you two help guide myself, Chief Akibalan, Chief Blackcoat, has been, you know, priceless, just as far as like you all's wisdom and guidance in regards to us, because it gives a good example of where we need to be. Both of you guys have your stuff together. You're here every week or whenever you can, and, you know, just sets that discipline and gives us something to strive for as younger individuals, something to strive for. So now I appreciate both of y'all, and I'm looking forward to continue building this this powerhouse and hopefully nation.
Definitely. And I agree. I definitely have appreciated the time committed and the time that we've spent together throughout this year. I've learned a lot. Just reading all of this information has been a wealth of information that all new to me, all new information. So I learned a lot, and I look forward to continue to grow with you guys as well. And it's been a pleasure, definitely learning with you guys and building.
I echo everything y'all said. I really appreciate how we met, the majority of us, where we met at, and our place in history on what we did together. And then how we just parlayed that into what we're doing now. I gotta salute you as well, Chief Biko, because I think that's my charge in life, my generation. It's our charge in life to pass the baton to the next generation. And some people did it for me. When I think about it, you know, there were some people that took time and planted little seeds. So I'm proud of you, Chief Akibalan, Chief Blackcoat, because y'all are hungry and y'all want the information. I think that's what really impresses me, more so about y'all, especially you, Chief Biko, quarterbacking this thing, sharing these.
Yeah, I gotta say that you definitely do a great job with leading the classes every week. So you do a great job. Communication is definitely on point.
Yep, and we're showing the world that we can be organized, we can have an agenda or a goal, and we can get from point A to point B. So we've walked this thing out and laid it out, and there's no big I's and little U's. You'll never know who holds what positions within our organization or within the way we rock. But yeah, shout out to you, Chief Biko, and I look forward to 2022. And at some point, it's got to click. It's got to click to our group of people.
Right.
And I'll just leave it right there. And that Emancipation Proclamation next week, we're going to give it to them. You weren't free. Tell you that right now. You weren't free.
And knowing that note right there, to be continued.